Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Thursday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
There you go. Almost Friday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for joining us. We begin this morning with those wildfires in Hawaii as search efforts and cleanup continues. Governor Josh Green says more than 1/3 of the burn areas have been searched so far by recovery teams looking for more victims.
At least 111 people have now been confirmed dead as Maui officials continue identifying victims. Several Hawaii legislators are now calling on the state attorney general to appoint an independent investigator to carry out a comprehensive review of the wildfires and the response. Questions are also being raised about the warnings that were issued as the fires began intensifying and spreading. Maui's emergency management director is defending the decision to not sound sirens during the wildfires.
In a wildland fire incident, the system has not been used either in Maui or in other jurisdictions around the state. In this case, our internal protocol is to use WEA, which is the Wireless Emergency Alert System, and the EAS, the Emergency Alert System.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not.
NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now on the ground in Hawaii. Steve, good morning. So let's begin there with that decision to not sound the warning sirens. Explain to us what goes into this decision to give warnings on the island, and what else is the emergency management director saying about this?
Yeah, Joe, first of all, this is one of the most sophisticated siren systems in the entire world. 400 sirens spread out across this entire island chain, 80 on Maui alone. The reasoning from the emergency management here is that those sirens are typically used for things like tsunamis. So the argument is that in using the sirens, they would have effectively put people even more danger, because the notion would have been to go up into a mountainous region where emergency managers say the fire was actually burning. So they, don't regret that decision, according to the emergency managers. I've spoken to several people, though, here, especially victims, who say that any warning would have been better than no warning. But I want you to hear from the emergency manager a little bit more about the decision and about why going up into the mountains would have been a bad idea, according to him. Listen to this.
Had we sounded the siren that night, we're afraid that people would have gone Mauka. And if that was the case, then they would have gone into the fire. And so that is the reason why our protocol has been to use WEA and EAS. By the way, I should also note that there are no sirens Mauka, or on the mountainside where the fire was spreading down. So even if we sounded the siren, it would not have saved those people on the mountainside.
Again, a lot of residents here said they would have liked to have heard something, and that would have been maybe the best way to get people out. But that's all part of this internal investigation, part of the investigation that will be handled by the state attorney general. That will be wide-ranging. They will have access to interviews and evidence. But that's alongside a call for a more independent investigation as well. We'll see how this plays out. Joe?
Steve, hey, it's Savannah. So in addition to those sirens raising a lot of questions, the other thing here, there's a spotlight on Hawaiian Electric, serves most of the island. So there's this lawsuit. It was first obtained by NBC News. The utility company is being sued, accused of knowingly failing to take proper action to prevent this tragedy. What more can you tell us about this litigation and what they're arguing here?
Yeah, the litigation is an accusation of not just negligence, but gross negligence. First of all, that seeing what the forecast was, which was 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, that's from the National Weather Service, that the power should have been cut. Seeing a wind event like that when you have dry brush that serves as tinder because of an ongoing drought here in Hawaii. It wasn't a severe drought, but enough to cause substantial damage had there been a fire spreading, that the power should have just been cut full stop. But it goes a little bit deeper than that for a few reasons. One is that there has been the accusation of years of mismanagement about this power company, that there were certain implications, certain procedures that should have been put into place to help stabilize and harden the grid, and also that there should have been a shut-off program. A lot of power companies have, in case of an emergency, a way to instantaneously trigger a way to cut that power. Their argument would have been that a lot of Lahaina and a lot of the island towns here rely on power for sophisticated and very precious things like medical material, and that would have been very difficult. But the point being is that the accusation is there should have been something done to prevent prevented well ahead of the fire even being here, Savannah.
Steve, we also know the president and the first lady are going to be in Maui on Monday to see the devastation firsthand. Very quickly, what all can we expect from that visit?
Tour of the devastation, of course, meeting with first responders, meeting with leadership. We understand that a lot of people that are rendering aid would like to have the visit from the president as well, so it's to bolster spirits. There is sort of a conflict of whether or not people feel like the president being here will help complicate matters a little bit, because it is such a huge footprint on such a small landmass area. But the point being is that a lot of people also feel like any sort of attention, especially from the federal government, is good attention.
All right. Steve Patterson in Hawaii. Steve, thank you.
Well, Gary LeBlanc joins us now. He's the founder of the nonprofit Mercy Chefs, on the ground providing hot meals to people. Gary, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. So tell us about the work that your organization is doing on the ground there in Maui, and just what you're seeing, the type of help that people need.
All right. Well, this is day 9 on the island for Mercy Chefs, and we've been serving hot meals for 8 days now. And we're right in the heart of it. We're in Kapalua at one of the churches serving shelters. And then I'm in Lahaina now at another church where we've been serving the community here. People are just still reeling. There's still a great deal of shock, and folks are having a hard time understanding. But it's indescribable, the destruction that has happened to Lahaina.
Gary, why was it so important for you to do this?
Well, what else could I do? I'm not going to watch it on TV. I mean, I'm a chef. I have skills. I've been able to apply them with my team for 18 years. We believe something amazing happens over a shared meal. You know, we get to do it as friends and family, but to be able to come and do that with people that have just lost everything is a great honor. And it's those moments where people just take a brief second and maybe contemplate their circumstance for the first time, or where community can gather. We see so much community here in Lahaina, and folks are gathering together and sharing a meal with their neighbors. It creates community, and that's going to be the best way for recovery, is through the people that are here and neighbors helping neighbors.
Gary, how long do you think you'll be on the ground helping out the people of Maui? And if people listening want to help, anything that they can do to aid your organization and what they're doing?
We're going to stay as long as we're needed by the people here in Hawaii, whether that's another 2 weeks, another 2 months, or whether it's a year. Mercy Chefs is going to stay till the very end. We're seeing some transitions happen with the sheltering population. We're monitoring those and seeing how we can react more closely. I just hope that folks don't forget the people of Lahaina over the next few weeks. It's going to be a long slog for them to get back together. And if people want to help, if people want to find out more about Mercy Chefs, our website, mercychefs.com, they can follow us in real time, and they can help support us as we serve the people here in Lahaina.
Gary LeBlanc, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the work you're doing. Really incredible. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Well, this morning we're getting new details about the potentially significant dates former President Donald Trump and his co-defendants could stand trial in Georgia over an alleged attempt to overturn the 2020 election result there. NBC News correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us from Atlanta with more on this. Hey, Julie, good morning. So Fulton County's district attorney has proposed March 4th next year for the trial. That's an important time for the GOP primaries, right? Why has the DA chosen that date?
Yeah, exactly, Savannah. Good morning to you both. Look, that's smack in the middle of the primary calendar. In fact, March 4th is the day before Super Tuesday, when several states across the country hold their primary elections. And of course, that's important for the criminal defendant at the top of this list of 19, former President Donald Trump, because he will be smack dab in the middle of campaigning. But Fani Willis, the district attorney here in Fulton County, she picked this date because remember what she promised Monday night when she announced these charges against the former president and those 18 other defendants. She said she wants this case to go to trial within 6 months. Some experts, legal experts, think that is an ambitious promise, an ambitious hope that Willis laid out there, because, of course, this is a sprawling indictment, 98 pages, 13 criminal counts for the former president and his defendants. They all can appeal motions, file motions to appeal this case separately, and she wants all of them, the DA, to appear in person, complicating this even further. So this is just the very beginning of what we're seeing the last few days of this case. Again, this is just a date of March 4th that she proposed to the judge. We'll see if they accept their terms.
Julie, something else that we're following this morning, a story of a fringe website that's posted the names and addresses of Georgia's grand jury members, the people who returned this indictment. What are we learning there?
Yes, Savannah, this is disturbing stuff, and we won't tell you what website it is or where you can find it because we don't want to promote those kinds of potentially harmful conversations that are happening online. But allegedly a group of right-wing people on an extremist fringe website are posting the information and personal details, addresses, names, pictures even on these websites, telling fellow people who are on those websites to target them, to send them letters, they're posting information from their social media platforms saying that the grand jury members are Democrats, that they are liberals. They were sharing some posts supporting former President Barack Obama, for example. Just really disturbing stuff. And I want to read you a part of what our team reported was found on these websites. Someone was posting, quote, "These jurors have signed their death warrant by falsely indicting President Trump." And of course, the former president has not been quiet himself either, posting about the grand jury, posting about DA Fani Willis, also posting in the other 3 indictments that he faces against the judges and against the special counsels in those cases as well. So this is something that we're closely monitoring because, of course, the grand jury members could be seriously under threat here just by their information being posted online in what typically is a secret process.
Julie, also, I do want to ask you before we let you go, the latest on the case of Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. He's attempting to switch his case to a federal court. Where does that stand?
Yeah, exactly. And brand new here, a judge actually granting him an initial evidentiary hearing for the end of the month, August 28th, to consider his request. Mark Meadows is one of those 19 defendants. He was the chief of staff to the former president. He was in that role during the 2020 election. He was on that phone call, the now famous phone call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger when former President Trump was asking him to produce those some 11,000 votes so he could overturn the election in Georgia. Well, Mark Meadows is saying because he was a federal employee at that time, his case should be tried in federal court where perhaps he could get a friendlier audience. We'll see if that happens, though. Again, remember, all of these defendants are linked. Fani Willis charged them together. So any one of these defendants asking for a motion like that could complicate it for the rest of them and set that kind of precedent.
Julie Sirkin, thanks as always for your reporting.
So how will this latest criminal indictment affect the run-up to the 2024 election, including next week's Republican presidential primary debate? Before this indictment, the biggest question was whether Trump would even turn up, with 4 of the 7 other candidates who qualified for the debate in Milwaukee saying they are preparing for Trump to be present. Trump has previously said he will not be attending the debate because he's so far ahead in the national polling. The latest Morning Consult poll shows he holds a 43-point lead over his nearest rival. That's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. But Trump's recent indictment in Georgia could mean the debate is overshadowed by something else. The former president has until August 25th, that's next Friday, to voluntarily surrender for booking in Atlanta. The debate is next Wednesday. That means, in theory, Trump could potentially plan his arrest to coincide with the debate. NBC News senior national politics reporter John Allen has been looking into this for us, and we'll talk more about the upcoming debate with him. John, we're hearing from some of the candidates that they're talking about Trump being on the debate stage. Nikki Haley had this to say during the Iowa State Fair.
He's taking the chance that everybody's going to talk about his record and talk about why he's not on that stage. I've never known him to be scared of anything. We'll see if he's scared to get on a debate stage, but I would expect him to get up there.
So, John, how could the former president use this arrest to his advantage on debate day? What are you hearing? And how much is this debate, whether he's there or not, going to focus on Trump?
Yeah, great questions, Joe. We don't know exactly when Donald Trump will turn himself into authorities at the Fulton County jail in Atlanta. But he does have until August 25th. Of course, the debate is August 23rd, which means if former President Trump decides he wants to, he could turn himself in at the same time as the debate. You can imagine the split screen, the sort of O.J. Simpson, white Ford Bronco media attention that Trump would divert from that debate as it's going on in Milwaukee, and the candidates are, ripping each other on the intricacies of agriculture policy or state pension assumptions. We don't know when Trump will turn himself in, but Republican strategists that we talked to said that it would be smart for him to try to use this opportunity to draw attention away from that debate.
So a candidate who will be appearing at the debate is Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence. He's already been holding mock debate sessions with his team. What are some of the obstacles that Pence faces here?
The biggest obstacle Pence faces is that at least a strong plurality and usually a majority of Republicans say right now that they prefer Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, and there is nobody who is more at odds with Trump on the last election than Mike Pence, who refused Trump's efforts to overturn the election results, basically, ensuring that Joe Biden would be the next president. So I think the big challenge for him is convincing Republicans that not only did he do the right thing, but that Trump did the wrong thing.
Let's also talk about the leading challenger, that's Governor Ron DeSantis. He's likely going to be a major target among all the candidates, including Trump, who often criticizes him on social media. What do we know about DeSantis's debate strategy, and what is his track record when it comes to debates?
Yeah, like everything else, he's been pretty close to the vest about how he's preparing for this debate. But one thing we do know is he's brought in Brett O'Donnell, who was an advisor to Mitt Romney and to John McCain on their debate preparation. Somebody who was also very close to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Pompeo, of course, knows President Trump as well as anybody else. I think, what they're going to have to do in DeSantis' world is figure out how to use this to turn around his campaign.
All right. John Allen. John, thank you so much.
A federal appeals court has decided to uphold some restrictions on accessing the abortion pill mifepristone. The drug will, however, remain on the market for now. Back in April, a Texas judge tried to put a hold on the availability of the drug, including the option to have the pill mailed to a person's home. Well, the case eventually reached the Supreme Court, with the higher court putting a hold on the ruling and letting it continue to play out in the lower courts. Well, fast forward to yesterday, when that Fifth Circuit Court ruled that the FDA had failed to take certain safety concerns into account when it made the pill easier to get back in 2016. As of now, the pill will remain on shelves, though the Justice Department said it plans to appeal that decision, meaning the case will very likely head back to the Supreme Court eventually.
Let's get the latest on some tropical systems out there.
That means Angie Lassman is now in studio with us. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. 'Tis the season, of course, for us to focus on tropics, and we've got a lot to talk about. A couple of disturbances in the Atlantic, but I want to focus on the 3 tropical storms right now in parts of the Pacific. We've got Greg, Fernanda, and Hillary. Greg and Fernanda are going to continue to track south of the Hawaiian Islands. We're not going to see direct impacts there. Really, the only thing we'll see are some breezy trade winds as those continue to kind of weaken, become remnant lows, and move to the west. That's the only impact we're seeing as far as those two are concerned. However, Tropical Storm Hillary, newly formed in the past 24 hours, has winds of 70 miles per hour and is expected to become a major hurricane here in the short term and bring impacts to not the east coast of the United States, where we normally see the first impacts from a tropical system during hurricane season, but instead the west coast. We are looking at a major hurricane here probably in the next 24 hours, 36 hours, maybe 48 hours. But even still, it means tropical moisture working into parts of the southwest, potentially flooding concerns for folks as we get into Sunday and into Monday. This will be something that we'll watch for parts of Southern California, Arizona. Really, the desert southwest could see some of that moisture, too. A couple of good things to note. It's going to become a major hurricane because it's over warm water now, but look what happens as we get into Sunday and really into parts of Monday. It really significantly weakens because it is moving over some cooler water. It's interacting with land. So those are good things. It doesn't mean that we're going to dodge the rain across this region. This is going to be something we'll look at really the Saturday timeframe to Tuesday. We could see some flooding, especially into portions of Southern California. Again, Nevada and Arizona are the places that we'll watch for the flooding concerns. It's not out of the question for us, in historically speaking, to see tropical storms, guys. We've had 3 in this region in history. The most recent, though, was in 1993. So either way, we get tropical moisture working into that area, but is it a tropical storm? We'll see by the time it works into specifically Southern California. Either way, though, the heavy rain is going to cause problems with flooding.
All right, Angie, thank you so much.
Thanks, Angie.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.